Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back, everybody. Great to have everybody here. Special guest tonight, Carl Larson, military expert, drone expert, and founder of Ukraine Defense Support, comes back on the program tonight to help us make sense of what's going on with technology, drone warfare, maybe even, the impact that that's having on military budgets and so on. And speaking of budgets, the big, beautiful bill, or some people say the big, ugly bill, it depends on your perspective, I guess, it passed. And tomorrow they'll have a big signing ceremony on the 4th of July. And Trump is going to have fighter jets flying overhead. And I don't know what that has to do with government spending other than militaries. I don't know. I don't get it. But hey, fly them if you got them. And speaking of flying, the Canadian airports affected by this sort of fake bomb threat thing this morning, they're all reopening now, and things are slowly beginning to return to normal. So those are the headlines, but when we come back on the other side, we will welcome Carl Larson back, and we'll start digging into today's special report on drone warfare and the future of warfare. Stay with us.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are Maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, let's bring Carl Larson back in. Hello, sir. Welcome back.
Great to be here, Rick.
No, it's a privilege. I really appreciate you coming on tonight because so much is changing. It all relates, of course, to budgets. It relates to, aid going to Ukraine and the way things are changing. And I think you can give us a better perspective on this because of your background and expertise in drones, which has become, a key component to not just the war in Ukraine, but future warfare. And I think also it's a key to understanding how Ukraine has been able to withstand these ongoing attacks from Russia, even tonight. So let me just throw it over to you and help us gain some opening perspective on why this is an important subject tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. So first of all, thank you for having me. It's a privilege to have a conversation with you and your viewers. And I'd encourage any of your viewers who have any questions to put them into the chat. And you mentioned you'll monitor them and bring them up, and we'll be sure and address them. And if anyone has any follow-up questions, they're welcome to reach out to me on one of the many websites I'm involved with. So real quick before I answer your question, just a little bit of background, so your viewers know what I'm able to speak to and what I'm not. So U.S. Army veteran and then veteran of the International Legion in Ukraine. I was a soldier there for 4.5 months in 2022. Served at the front lines east of Kharkiv. That's at the very east part of the country. have lots of stories and presentations, and unfortunately sad. Some of those stories are kind of sad, but very proud of that. And so I did face some drone warfare while I was there, but at a minimal level. Drones were just being used for basically artillery spotting at that point. And then after coming back to the U.S. After that, I started a couple nonprofit organizations here in the U.S. to help Ukraine, and we've been supplying non-lethal aid to Ukraine's military ever since. Things like drone detectors, drones, non-lethal drones, right? ISR drones, they'd be called, like Mavericks, DJI Mavericks, things like that. And then night vision and vehicles and things like that. So I know a little bit about what the soldiers in Ukraine actually need. And I know we talk to them all the time, and we've got some pretty good info, pretty good intel on the enemy and the tactics, the ever-evolving tactics and technology that both the Ukrainians are using, and the orcs, as they like to call them, the orky. That's one of the words for them that I can use on a public broadcast. The others are unprintable, so you can imagine. So I'm happy to share what I can about those tactics and technology. What I don't have really good intel on is what the U.S. Army. Everyone asks, well, okay, what is the U.S. Army? What is NATO doing? And first of all, they're not sharing the latest and greatest technologies they're working on. And second of all, I'll just tell you, I talk to NATO soldiers, NATO officers quite often, and we just met with NATO's Science for Peace and Security Department in Brussels earlier this month. No, excuse me, last month, in mid June, and they told me that they are years behind the latest technology in Ukraine, several development cycles behind, and development cycles in the U.S. are in terms of years, if not decades, whereas in Ukraine, they're in months, if not weeks. So the latest design cycles they're necessity is the mother of invention, and if you're gonna die if you don't innovate, you learn to innovate very quickly, as they have. So what you've got is this situation where the newest technology is being used to great effect at the front lines in Ukraine, and then all around the world, ministries of defense or DoD here in the U.S. They're looking very closely and trying to identify what is going to be the technology that they should invest in over the next 5 to 10 years. In other words, what is Russia and Ukraine using in Ukraine that China might use in Taiwan, right? Or Hamas might use in Gaza, or any of the world's authoritarian, nasty, or Iran might use against its neighbors, right? And all these authoritarian countries are banding together and learning from each other and helping each other. And we democracies have to do the same. And we have to learn how to innovate our defense industries, because really an underlying theme that I've heard over and over is that our defense industries have been consolidated, and the efficiency is way down. The innovation is tremendously down. They're geared towards providing good, stable jobs as opposed to defending nations. That's certainly true here in the U.S. I don't know about up in Canada. I suspect it would probably be similar. I know I certainly heard that over and over in the 2 weeks I spent in Western Europe in June and May. I heard that from Belgian soldiers. I heard that from Dutch soldiers. I've heard that from German soldiers. So anyway, the take-home lesson here is that NATO, the democratic nations around the country, around the world, have to change. We have to innovate, and we have to invest in long-term systems of innovation to encourage entrepreneurs to build the next generation of weapons that will be ready to fight not this war, but the next war, right? Whereas, unfortunately, right now, our arsenals are stocked full of equipment and tactics and trained personnel trained to fight the last war.
Yeah, so I understand. Yeah.
Answer the question.
And we're seeing that on the battlefield in Ukraine. Can you speak to how that you've seen an evolution since the beginning of the full scale invasion?
Oh yeah. So I mean, when I was there in 2022, as I mentioned, drones, primarily they were just ISR drones, primarily DJI Mavics used for artillery spotting, and quite effectively, by the way. If you've ever been under artillery, you know that it's terrifying, but it's usually pretty inaccurate. If you're in a bunker or you're in a trench, you're usually pretty safe. That is, unless there's one of these nasty little guys hovering over you, in which case you're screwed. You better be in a deep bunker, or you better be hidden in some way, or you better get out of Dodge, because those artillery rounds are going to land right on you. And so since then, there's been a real evolution, like you say. There's been both sides, Ukraine and Russia. Usually Ukraine has led the way, but sometimes the Russians have innovated faster. I'll talk about that in a sec. But yeah, there's been a definite change from ISR only drones to grenade droppers. So basically, they just put drop kits on these things and drop grenades. And then some smart guy figured out how to strap an RPG onto an FPV drone, like this guy right here, right? That's an FPV drone. Mm-hmm. And they figured out they can take a 2 kilogram, 1.5 to 2 kilogram RPG 7 round right into a tank, and fit right between the reactive armor, or right between the slack grill, or hit it where it's going to do the most damage. And for a $500 drone, you've just taken out a $1.2 million tank. And now it's still continuing. So parallel to the actual attack drones, there's been an evolution in ISR, high-flying ISR drones. So it started out, the Russians had a big tactical advantage there. They had their Orlans and their Zalas, high-flying fixed-wing drones that are immensely important for C2, for command and control and understanding the battle space, informing those commanders of where to put their strike packages. And over time, the Ukrainians learned how to shoot those down, and they learned how to intercept those, and they put up their own fixed-wing drones. I will still say that Russia seems to still have an advantage on that. And then, of course, Russia has satellites, so they have satellite imagery, whereas the Ukrainians have been provided with satellite imagery by the U.S. for several years, but as I understand it, that has recently come to an end, which is unfortunate in my view. So the Russians have some advantages there. And then what we've seen latest on the battlefield as far as drones is fiber optic drones. So everybody thought that everyone has been thinking that AI would revolutionize warfare, and we'd have all these hunter-killer autonomous drones like a la Terminator. And it really hasn't worked out that way. The AI has not been able to reliably target, acquire, and target differentiate and implement terrain matching to be able to replace a human in both the transportation form of part of the flight, and then the actual final I forget what it's called, but the final part of the kill chain where you're actually attacking the enemy. They can't reliably differentiate a friend from foe soldier, and they can't. They'll hit trees basically sometimes instead of soldiers. So what has revolutionized warfare is a very simple technology that's been around since the 1960s, and that's just fiber optic. I mean, essentially, fiber optic drones are essentially guided missiles, and that technology has been around since the 1960s. The
so
U.S.
There's an image of fiber optic drones. So are you like saying that you literally have fiber optics on a spool of some kind, and as it flies out, these fiber optic cables are connected directly to the drone?
Yeah, exactly. So it looks like kind of a Hornet. It's got this big 3D printed cylinder on the bottom of it, and of course it's got a warhead on there too. And then and it just spools out that hair-long fiber optic cable as it flies. And these things can go 12 miles. Yeah, that's what, 20 kilometers. So they can go 20 kilometers or even further. You need a pretty good-sized drone to fly that far, because it's kind of heavy to carry all that fiber. But they're completely unjammable and almost undetectable. I mean, you can't detect them with a jammer like that. They're invisible to that. So yeah, so that's like a Mavic 3. So so that wouldn't work for fiber. You have to put them on a really heavy lift FPV drone, because that Mavics can only carry, yeah. So okay, that's what the fiber systems look like. But they usually go on like a heavy lift FPV drone. And yeah, they're really this has absolutely revolutionized warfare there. It's enabled Russia to kick Ukraine out of the Kursk region. Of course, there were several factors to that. You know, there were the North Korean soldiers and other factors, but really it was the fiber drones. And Russia, I have to give Russia credit. They were the first to innovate this. The Chinese actually came up with the system. It's called the Skywalker system, but the Russians put it on their drones first. And in 2023, actually late 2023, and we worked with a Ukrainian team that was the first team. We're very proud. It was the first Ukrainian combat deployed fiber optic system, and they had their first combat deployment. Very proud of that. But it gives you an illustration of the differences between the Russian and the Ukrainian system. The Russians were able to disseminate that technology throughout their entire military very quickly in a matter of months, whereas we are still in 2025 still struggling to get Ukrainian drone units to use this technology, even though we will give it to them for free. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense will give it to them for free, and there's a lot of units out there that don't want it. They're unfamiliar with it. They don't want to learn a new technology. They get their radio drones for free. So if they lose half of them, they don't care, even though it means half of their missions don't get serviced, and half of their, not a half, but like maybe 25% of their kill targets are not serviceable, as they say, which is a huge loss to the war effort. So that gives you an idea of the different. I mean, Russia's an authoritarian system, right? They can disseminate technology and orders much quicker. You can always do that in an authoritarian system than in a more messy democracy like Ukraine is.
So we've seen just in the last couple of days successful drone attacks by Ukraine on Russian targets. I think just yesterday they took out a munitions storage facility on the Russian side. Are you familiar with that? I'm going to show you some video of, I think, that attack yesterday.
I don't keep up with the individual attacks because they're just a constant stream of them. I'm more interested in the highly innovative attacks that Ukraine has used deep within Russia, such as the spiderweb attacks that were emulated by Israel. That's going to change warfare. And now you have a lot of people here in the U.S. and I'm sure in Canada looking very carefully at our military bases and looking at if China owns any land nearby, right? Or like, are there any trucking roads where trucks could drive up next to that base?
Yeah,
it's a real concern.
And this is, again, just an example of what really is a low-cost weapon taking out a high-value target, which is a storage facility for munitions.
Love it. Nothing better than a nice orc barbecue.
And that's not with like a cruise missile. That's not a multi-million-dollar piece of weaponry. That's just a drone that maybe cost. What would a drone like that ultimately cost? Hundreds or thousands?
Hundreds. But so a drone like that probably, they'd use a really good version, not some cheap 500 one. They'd probably use one that costs about $1,000. Now the real so I've been doing some research on the spiderweb system. So there were several innovative ways that the Ukrainians pulled that off. So they obviously they built these specialized trailers with these hidden compartments in the roofs with, mechanized roofs that would open and close. And the drones they used, they weren't really that specialized. What was specialized is the control system, which used the Russian cell phone network, which is genius when you think about it, right? Because those trucks were driven by Russians who were just given an order, an invoice, hey, park the truck on this side of the road here at this time of day. So I'm sure that the Russian authorities gathered up those truckers. I'm sure that they had to sit a long time in a nasty little room, might still be in that nasty little room, right?
Yes.
But they're completely innocent. They were just truckers. the drone pilots were probably back in Ukraine, on their headsets, which is just phenomenal that you could do that for such a low cost. I mean, we do that, with Predator drones that cost millions of dollars with all the hardware and everything. And you got the guys sitting in the containers in Nevada, in the Nevada desert, bombing terrorists in Pakistan, or, whatever, Taliban people or something. But to do that at such a low cost and in a hostile adversary that's a near peer. I mean, Russia is no joke when it comes to electronic warfare, and has a pretty robust domestic security apparatus. I think we'd all agree on that. And for them to get away with that is just phenomenal. I mean, you can imagine how difficult it must be to be a trucker in Russia right now. Right? It must not be a fun job.
Right. And it also shows that with innovation and technology, that it shows how the Ukrainians have been able to strike deep inside Russian territory to take out military targets.
Yeah, and hopefully they'll do it over and over. I heard they just did another one. It wasn't this arms depot that you mentioned. It was a different. They struck a drone factory that's producing those Shahed drones, the copies of the Shaheeds that have been terrorizing Ukraine. It's just horrendous. So good. Bless them for doing that. There's a lot of talk about the Ukrainian saboteurs within Russia, and there's a lot of propaganda on both sides, honestly, about that. There have been a lot of FSB offices that have had mysterious fires, and a lot of recruitment centers have gone up in fire as well. And then, of course, there's been several high-profile assassinations of Russian generals and admirals and such, and to which I'm all in favor. That's good. I'm glad the Ukrainians are doing that. Is that going to make a measurable impact on the war? Probably not a huge amount. It's just going to make the average Russian more paranoid and more xenophobic, probably. But certainly these long-range, deep penetration, subterfuge-oriented drone strikes are going to have an impact, I think.
Yeah, and it is going both ways, because here tonight we're seeing on social media reports of Russia launching massive drone attacks as we speak tonight. And that's these are reports of Ukrainian large Russian drone attack right now. That was 4 hours ago. So it just shows that this is the changing face of warfare. That being said, what kind of defense systems are in place on the Ukrainian side to counter these increasingly large waves of drone attacks from Russia?
Well, yeah, no, that's a great question. Happy to answer. But I want to just first mention, comment on something you said. So yeah, Russia is sending long-range Shahed drones to attack Ukraine. Ukraine does that too, but not very effectively. The Russians have very good anti-air defenses. But I just want to point out, what we've seen is a lot of sabotage within Russia, and a lot of these, like at least one of these very effective spiderweb attacks, and I think we're going to see more. You don't see that sort of thing in Ukraine. I know for a fact that Russia has agents in Ukraine, and they're doing various nasty things. There's been, I think, over a dozen attempted assassinations of Zelensky, and there's some other nasty things that they're doing. But they don't seem to be able to mount any large-scale attacks from within Ukraine, right? At least not the unoccupied territories. So that's interesting. It tells you that either Ukraine has a more effective domestic security apparatus, which I doubt, or that the Ukrainian society is more supportive and less likely to be turncoats, essentially. So it's interesting. I thought that was interesting that Russia hasn't really pulled off a spiderweb in Ukraine yet, at least that I know of, and hopefully never will. To get back to your question, I mean, the Ukrainians now, this is the third year of the full-scale war. They have very robust, multi-layered anti-air defense systems, some of which we've been very proud to help support. So, I mean, they start out with detection systems all along the border, and then, of course, they were receiving radar, not radar, but actually I can't say, they were receiving some early intel from the US. I'll just say that. I don't think they're receiving that anymore, but so now they have early warning systems along the border, and then they've got essentially machine gun crews all along the flight path. And then for the more, they try to determine where the drones are going to hit, and then they have to prioritize. And it's a really, can you imagine how terrible that job must be? Okay, this drone's going to hit probably a living area, full of apartment blocks. But this other drone is going to knock out power for 1 million people in the middle of winter. And a lot of people will probably freeze to death. So which one do we shoot down? We can only shoot down one. I mean, it must be a really fun job to have to make that decision all the time. But they do have a limited number of Patriots. And those are the only anti-air systems able to shoot down the Kinjals, as I understand it. Russia has a limited number of the Kinjals. So what they try to do is they send in the Shaheeds first. And they always do mass attacks, right, to try to overwhelm the Ukrainian air. Both sides do that, really. And then they send the Kinjals at the end, when presumably the Ukrainian air defense has been exhausted. Unfortunately, you might have heard President Trump just shut off all aid to Ukraine. There's a lot of actions happening in Congress right now, trying to put pressure on the White House to restart that. But yeah, they've killed all the trickle of aid that we were sending since he was elected. So they stopped the resupplies of the Patriot missiles. They stopped the spare parts for the F-16s. They stopped the planned replenishment of the M1 Abrams tanks. They stopped the replenishment of the HIMARS. And there was a number of other things. These are already funded. These were already voted by Congress. These were already promised to the Ukrainian people. And now they're all stopped. So that really sucks. So that will definitely, the Patriots especially, will have a measurable impact on like a lot of Ukrainian lives are going to be lost because we're refusing to supply those Patriot missiles, unfortunately.
Can you clarify that for me? Because I'm hearing all these, conflicting reports, really. On the one hand, I'm hearing that some support has been cut off, but it's limited. And then I'm hearing on the other side that it's all been cut off, that there's no more aid going. I can't really figure out what the truth is.
Yeah, we're still trying to figure it out. I mean, as everyone knows, what Trump says and what Trump does are two different things. And so we don't really know until the Department of Defense actually says this is being sent. And a lot of supplies, they don't actually give formal notice that they're sending for obvious reasons. Sometimes we hear about it from our guys on the other end who say, hey, we've got empty HIMARS. We haven't gotten any HIMARS missiles for 2 months. What's going on? And so I'll just share my screen real quick, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I understand the rules. Yes. Let's proceed. Okay. All right. Here we go. So this is less than a day old here, this news article. As you can see, we're all trying to process what exactly is going on. So yeah, there we go. So we're not sure exactly what deliveries are going to be stopped. All we know is that a top-ranking spokesman of the DoD said that this guy, Undersecretary of Defense Colby, he essentially said that the U.S. that we shouldn't be sending any more. We won't be sending any more weapon systems to Ukraine because the U.S. Army needs them. Which, of course, is nonsense. The U.S. Army doesn't need more Patriots. What are we going to do with Patriot missiles right now? You could make a case that Israel needs them, but that's a different argument. So it's nonsense, obviously. Getting a little over memory usage there. Anyway, so I'm sorry to say this, but I don't have the answer for you right now, Rick.
Okay, I'm not surprised actually, because we're getting all these conflicting messages. And even when I go back and look at what Trump was saying at the NATO summit, it seemed like he was softening and pivoting more toward Ukraine at the time, saying on the one hand, well, he said that we're looking at maybe sending more Patriot missiles. And I reported here, Trump is open to sending more Patriot missiles. And then just days later, we get this, they're cutting off the aid. It's just a roller coaster ride. So no, I'm not surprised at all that you don't have the answer. I don't know if anybody does. Maybe only Donald Trump knows the answer. So where are we at here? What's
Exactly.
more reports on the same thing, basically, right?
Yeah, this is just the original article that came out 2 days ago and 3 days ago, and so yeah, especially the air defense missiles. But it looks likely that other supplies will be curtailed as well. Yeah, see, artillery rounds, air defense missiles. So what we're hoping, this didn't come directly from Trump. It came from an undersecretary. And so we're really hoping that with some congressional pressure, this policy could change. So there's people who know Pete Hegseth directly, personally, who are calling him about this.
Yeah. This will leave really civilians in jeopardy, because a lot of these drone attacks we've seen have been aimed at civilian targets. I think it's fairly clear that Russia is trying to apply pressure to the civilian population to kind of grind down support and undermine morale.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I mean, historically speaking, that's not going to work unless you completely destroy a society. So I mean, if you look at Hitler's blitz on the UK in World War II, if anything, it brought the British society together and made them more supportive of the war effort. It really made them realize back home what their boys were fighting for. And I think you're seeing a similar situation in Ukraine. I mean, everybody complains. I have a lot of Ukrainian civilian friends, and I talk to them all the time. And of course, they complain about it. Of course, they're miserable. They're hated. They're very upset at the situation. But none of them talk in defeatist language. I mean, and these are not people who pull punches. I will say they complain about their government. They complain about their neighborhood. They complain about society and such all the time. They're not PC people, but they none of them are made more likely to give up as a result of these bombings. They're just more and more pissed off and more determined not to be put under Putin's boot, frankly.
Mm-hmm. So with these munitions being cut off, or the aid, I guess, being cut to whatever degree, we're not really sure. Where does that leave Ukraine? If all U.S. aid stops, where does that leave Ukraine? Are they still in a strong position because of ongoing support from Europe? Has the evolution of technology placed Ukraine in a better position than most people might think because of their innovation using drones? Or where are they going to end up?
Well, that's the big question, right? Everyone wants to know how long the Ukrainians can hold on for, basically, is really when you boil it down. And I'll just say that, a year ago, before the election, I must have had 100 versions of the same conversation with Americans, Europeans, but never with Ukrainians. And the conversation would always go something like this. Well, do you think Trump could win? And I'd say, yeah, absolutely. Oh, really? Well, what would that mean for Ukraine? Well, it probably wouldn't be good for Ukraine. Oh, well, then would the Ukrainians give up? Would they stop fighting? Surely without, do you think Trump could pull all the aid? And I'd say, yeah, absolutely. He's been pretty consistent on that, actually, for decades. He loves Russia, loves it. Mm-hmm. Always has. And if American aid stopped, then Ukraine would be out of the war, right? They'd be defeated immediately. They'd have to give up. Or there would be a coup against Zelensky. And I people who say that, I just stare at them and I just say, well, I'm sorry that you're so misinformed. There's really no other way to put it. You clearly don't have Ukrainian friends, or you haven't spent any time in the country, because if you had, you'd know that these people aren't giving up. They're not. They're fighting for their homeland, and they're fighting for the sanctity of their daughters and the lives of their sons. I mean, they'll give up when the last Ukrainian lies choking in a pool of his blood. You know, they. I mean, if you Google the Holodomor, just Google it, and you know, Google Stalin's impact on Ukraine. You know, and these people, they have long memories. Like everybody has a grandpa who died in the Holodomor, or who died in the Great Patriotic War on something dumb that he shouldn't have died on. Everybody understands what being under Russian domination would mean for their families. So American aid, we're seeing it dying down to a trickle, and maybe even that trickle is going to get choked off here. Does that mean Ukraine's going to give up? Absolutely not. Does it mean that it'll be a tougher slog for Ukraine, and that Russia's advances might accelerate? Yeah, absolutely. Russia can't conquer all of Ukraine. They've even admitted as much. What they're trying to do is take the entirety of the Donbass and the Luhansk regions. And they'd love to have a coup against Zelensky, but now they're starting to realize that's not really possible. Even if they killed Zelensky, almost certainly Zaluzhny, I got to be careful and not mispronounce those names, but yeah, almost certainly General Zaluzhny, who's the second most popular politician in the country, and even though he's a former general, he's a politician. He's probably going to run, and he's probably going to win, and so he would become probably president after a caretaker government, and he's stronger on defense than Zelensky, and probably would be, honestly, in a lot of people's opinion, a stronger wartime leader. So even if they kill Zelensky, it wouldn't benefit Russia, really, maybe in the short term for a few weeks. So really what you're seeing here is it's an unfortunate situation where American support for this, in my opinion, great cause of our generation has dwindled away due to one politician's misplaced affections and loyalty, let's say. But is that really going to end the war or cause the Ukrainians to give up? Absolutely not. It just means that more people will die, and there will be more Ukrainians living temporarily under Russian domination. And I say temporarily because I'm firmly convinced that the Ukrainians will liberate their occupied land. If you look at the people, if you are able to actually talk to actual Ukrainians living under Russian domination in those areas, they're not happy. There's maybe 10% who are happy, but the rest of them can't stand living under Russian domination. It's a miserable system. They would much rather be part of Ukraine, even if they are a little upset at, having to learn the Ukrainian language. Maybe they prefer to speak Russian because they and their family always spoke Russian. And that is a little point of contention in that part of the world. I'm not going to lie and say it isn't. But really, the vast majority of people would rather live under Ukraine. So I firmly believe that Ukraine will liberate those areas eventually.
Information warfare also a big part of all of this. And, even over here in Canada, I think in the United States as well, you're seeing a lot of Russian information warfare, propaganda, all of it designed to erode support again for the war effort. Can you speak to that and where we're at with that?
Yeah, that's a favorite topic of mine. So if you don't mind, I'll just share my screen again here.
Sure.
See if I can figure this out this time. Okay. So there we go. Yeah. So we'll talk more about how unprepared NATO is for drone warfare.
Sure.
And a good article on the topic. But let me direct your viewers to this Wikipedia article. So, and I'm going to speak about this from the American perspective, but I'm sure that these issues have a similar impact on Canada, and I know for a fact that they do upon Western Europe. Based on I'm on calls several times a week with Europeans, with Germans, with Dutch, with Belgians, Frenchies, and a couple of UK people sneak in now and then. Everyone is concerned about Russian money going into propaganda efforts and also supporting antisocial political movements on the far right and on the far left. And I think everybody in the world should realize that that's a problem, but I don't know as people realize how bad of a problem it is. So I just want to give one example here in the U.S. This Tenet Media scandal, and so back last year, it was exposed that Russia had paid about $10 million to 6 conservative influencers. Some of whom might be recognizable: Benny Johnson, and then Tim Pool. So I know Tim Pool. Yeah, Lauren Southern. Yeah, I know Tim Pool. I've had a lot of friends send me his articles and his videos, and sometimes the guy makes a lot of sense, but then he'll veer off into this just conspiracy theory. Oh, Ukraine's, just all the money that we send over there is going to Zelensky's coke habit or his yachts, and it's not a real democracy over there because they haven't held elections recently, and it's just good money after bad. We should just pull all of our support. And now we know why he said that, because he was paid to. And this is an example. So this was a rather amateurish Russian operation to buy the loyalties of these conservative influencers and get them to parrot Putin's talking points, especially around Ukraine. And it was exposed. These 2 Russians living in the United States who facilitated the operation, they were charged and I think deported. I'm not sure, but they found it and they shut it down. Hopefully these influencers changed their views since then. I'm not sure, but hopefully. But it makes you wonder, okay, if they found this one operation for $10 million, how many others that were not so amateurishly run did they not find? Did they find, was there a similar operation on the far left, right? Is Russia funding these crazy defund the police people, these Antifa people, right? Makes you wonder. I mean, and then was there more money going to other influencers as well that the FBI didn't find? So this is just one example of how Russia, frankly, attacks our democracy. And I view this as an attack. I think that Russia is at war with democracy and has been for a long time, just in a quiet hybrid warfare way that is not recognizable to the average American or the average Canadian or European, unfortunately. And I think it's our job to wake up our fellow sleepy members of democracies who'd rather focus on football and Little League and other more local concerns than what Russia is doing from across the world. Because if we don't, our society is going to be torn apart, and we're going to end up fighting ourselves instead of the real enemy. And of course, that's what Russia wants us to do. Why fight your enemy when you can make them fight themselves?
So when this story broke, these influencers, of course, started to defend themselves online. And I remember distinctly Tim Pool responding to it on his program, just dismissing it and then saying, yeah, it's all bullshit. And then he signed off. But
he was the victim.
Sorry, what's that?
He famously said that he was the victim.
Yes, that's right. Do you think that these influencers, and there were some suggestions that this was the case, that they were not really aware that the money was coming from Russia?
I don't know. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Certainly the articles that I read about this said that they should have known. But, just because some Italian comes and pays you money to say things doesn't mean that they're from the mafia. Now, if they're paying you to say things about the Gambino family, maybe you should be a little suspicious. If somebody with a Russian name and a Russian accent pays you money and they want you to say certain things about Russia, well, you should be suspicious. So should they have guessed? Yes. But honestly, unfortunately, Rick, there's always going to be people with their hands out for money. So the real problem here is Russia paying it, and the fact that we only caught this one operation, and I wonder how many others we didn't catch. But yeah, they should have refused this money. It makes you wonder how many others did refuse that are not on this list, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And how effective has this been? I guess it is having impact because there is, especially I would say within the MAGA movement, there is mounting opposition to the war in Ukraine. There were a lot of people online when the announcement came that aid was being cut off this week, and there was a lot of cheering going on Twitter or X. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's unfortunate that support for Ukraine amongst Republicans has decreased, and certainly amongst MAGA, amongst Trump's base, has dramatically decreased, which is really unfortunate because I really think that actually America First, part of America First is ensuring that we have a strong and robust network of allies. I think that America First means putting our defense and the security of our society above other concerns, and frankly, having allies that can help protect that society should be natural part of that defensive posture. So I really think that people are falling victim to conspiracy theories and to short-sighted tribal loyalties that are overcoming their what's best for the society. And clearly that this money that was paid to these influencers had an impact. Like I said, I had several videos forwarded to me by several of my conservative friends who, said, well, Tim Pool says that Ukraine's just all corrupt and all of our tax money is going to Zelensky's coke habit. I mean, yeah. He says that NATO provoked the war, right? I mean, there's been many commentators, and there's an argument there. You can have a principled discussion there, but the way Tim does it is just, propaganda. So I'm sure that it had an effect. And it makes me wonder what other Russian money is going into our ecosystem here in the States and then up in Canada. And certainly Germany is awash with Russian propaganda money, and the UK as well. Those two countries are their expatriate destinations for two things: for Russian people and Russian money. They like to park their money in German and British banks, and they like to buy houses and buy property. That's kind of their escape plan for if things go south in Russia. And so those countries have large amounts of propaganda. And I'm told by people who would know that many British and German politicians are basically bought by Russia, unfortunately.
Yeah, so there's this all and another story that keeps surfacing is Zelensky buying casinos with aid money that has gone to Ukraine, and I have people sending me that kind of stuff all the time. But as I've gone in and I've dug into it, and it's just pure propaganda, just outright lies.
That's one I have not heard. Zelensky buying casinos. Yeah, please send me that sort of stuff. I'm not going to argue with whoever sends it to you, but I'm just curious.
Right here.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's quite the tale. Here, I'll show you. I'll put it up on the screen. So, yeah, I wasn't really prepared to talk about this tonight, but here we go. I believe that's it there, right? No, that's not the right one. Let me find it again. Maybe this is it.
I Googled it, and there's a lot of reports about this.
Yeah, so claim that President Zelensky bought a luxury casino.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen complaints that Zelensky makes a bunch of money, and he's a grifter or whatever. And if he makes a bunch of money and he buys a casino or whatever, great, more power to him. I mean, the guy's almost died several times for his country. As long as he's not using, obviously, international aid money to do it.
No.
And it isn't a good look, I will say, but did he really?
Yeah, so here's a report from Snopes. Ukraine's President Zelensky bought a casino in Cyprus. How is Zelensky going to explain this to Western funders? Well, it's, according to Snopes, false, and I've looked into it too. it's false. In early June 2024, accounts on X began sharing the claim that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, at the height of his country's fight against Russian military occupation, purchased a resort in Cyprus called the Vuni Palace Casino Resort and Hotel the previous month. The claim was first made in a since deleted June 1st, 2024 story by the Turkish news outlet Oda TV. It was then amplified in part by an account on X, Aussie Cossack, which carries all the pro-Russian information and propaganda, that describes itself as a registered foreign agent for Sputnik News, a Russian state-controlled media agency. So they go down here and they dig into it and debunk it. It's simply not true. I also went to look into it and checked out the actual current owners of the casino, and the president of Cyprus, Nikos Christo, I can't pronounce his last name, responded to the report as well, saying there was no evidence to support the claims as reported by In Cyprus. Bottom line, in sum, the claim that Zelensky purchased a casino in Cyprus is belied by the fact that the owners of that casino say they have not sold it, by the fact that the original reporting on the claim was based on a fake website, and by the fact that this original reporting was deleted because no real evidence supports the claim. Snopes rates it as false. I also went down that road, and I came to the same conclusion based on the real information that I was able to find online. It's just a lie.
Yeah, I'm doing a little deep dive here. So Newsweek has a whole deep dive on it here. Oh, I tried to share my screen. Maybe it didn't work. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yep.
And yeah, apparently the hotel is suing over this. So apparently there was a website. Very interesting. So there was a website that was amplified by some probably paid news content, and the website was this one here. So somebody set this up. Obviously, it's down now.
Yep.
And then it claimed that this hotel had been purchased by Zelensky. So yeah, spent hundreds of millions of dollars on a resort through his company Film Heritage. Faced false claims that he's purchased extravagant properties around the world. So the website, yeah, this is the website, and then it was originated from a now deleted Turkish article. And then, so the hotel's owners are taking legal action. That's right. And they say that that they what is it? They only they have one website, and this other website is no connection to them, and they have not sold their hotel. So anyway, I mean,
yeah. And I went and I found the when I was researching, I went and I looked at all these pictures. These are pictures on Google of the resort, and they have a website. So it's not hard to find the actual business. You can book a trip to the place on TripAdvisor, right? And so it's not hard to find out who actually owns it. And when you dig into it, Zelensky doesn't own the thing. It's just a lie, but it makes for a good yarn and gets taxpayers pissed off when they think that their tax money is really going to a corrupt Ukrainian politician, as they would say, who's then out buying cocaine, yachts, and casinos. And as you dig into the stories and you research to see how much money would be involved, like it's insane. There's no way that he could even buy all these things: jets, yachts, multiple casinos. Oh, and the new one is property in Florida, a mansion in Florida.
So I mean,
it just goes on and on and on.
There'd be so much media attention. There'd be so many people criticizing this. It's just ridiculous. It's QAnon level.
If the Florida mansion story is true, then why aren't all the people opposed to the funding of Ukraine down there right now protesting in front of the place? Because it's not true.
It's low information clickbait. But now there are legitimate criticisms of Zelensky, and if he ran today, he would probably lose to Zelensky. But they're more about his personal style and how he's surrounded himself with loyalists as opposed to really skilled people who know what they're doing. And he's made a few decisions that people disagree with. And you can't blame Zelensky for this, but it is not ideal, I will say, that they have not had an election. I know that it's part of their constitution that if martial law is declared, you can't have an election. And I know that obviously the people in the occupied territories wouldn't be able to vote. And I know it would be a big expense. It would be a huge, you can imagine getting ballots to frontline soldiers, hey, we got to pull you off the line because you got to go fill out your ballot, right? But, the U.S. did it during the Civil War. And so a lot of countries in Europe did it during wartime, World War II. I feel like they should do that. But that's something that you can argue back and forth. It's not like, okay, we should stop our aid because I disagree with this policy or that policy, right? So, okay. Yeah, if you see more conspiracy stuff I'd be curious. So
I work with the folks they run a website called ukrainefactcheck.org. I don't know, you probably haven't heard of it. It's not, if we don't do a good job of publicizing it, we really need to do a better job. But yeah, this is it here, Ukraine Fact Check. So it's just a bunch of nonsense that's debunked, basically. Yeah, Zelensky, Ukraine is taking money from Hawaii, blah, blah, blah.
Just on and on and on. It doesn't stop. But that's the nature of warfare too, especially today. I've been saying that I think the information war is just as important as, maybe even more important than some of the, the other front lines that the war is being fought on, because there's literally a war on for your mind. And if Absolutely. They can undermine support, then, if one side can undermine support on the other side, then you win. And that's largely what I think Russia is. That's the game they're playing, really, is grind it down, outlast the other side by hoping that American fatigue sets in. People just get tired of the war and tired of, all the money going to it. And that's really what they're doing, I would say.
Well, I think they succeeded in that. Really, no, they did. They succeeded. The Russians held on long enough for American support to shut off, and they were, I won't say my hat's off to them, but I will give them grudging respect. The Russians are consistently underestimated, and there are some things that they do well. But does that mean that Ukraine's going to give up? Oh, hell no. And so I think your listeners might be interested if I could share a little bit from our trip to Europe. We just had a 2-week delegation to I want to say Western Europe, but we also spent a week in part of that. We spent a week in the Baltics. So if I could share my screen here real quick, I can't share all of this presentation, but I think part of it I can and would be interesting.
Okay, I'll tell you, when we get that queued up, let's take a short break. We'll come back and then we'll continue with this on the other side. And also just a reminder that if you guys have questions, just put them in the chat on the Rumble channel, and I will convey them to Carl. And that this will give you guys some time as well to start compiling some questions there. So we'll come back, we'll dig into what Carl is going to present, and we'll pile up a few questions in the chat, and then we'll resume on the other side of this. Stay with us.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, we are back, and I will say that I noticed in the chat a couple of people saying, "Who's the guest?" And that's because we have new people joining. Carl, would you mind again just reminding people who you are?
Sure, Rick. Yeah, no problem. Hello, everyone. So my name is Carl Larson. I'm an American. I'm joining us from Seattle, Washington, and I'm a U.S. Army veteran, also a veteran of the International Legion for the Defense of Ukraine. I served in the Ukrainian military for. I was in Ukraine for 6 months. I served for 4.5 months at the east of Kharkiv, at the front lines east of Kharkiv, from April to August 2022. So that was very much the early stages of the full-scale invasion. Things have changed a lot since then. But since then, I've come back to Seattle, resumed my regular life, and started several pro-Ukraine nonprofits. And so I fly regularly to Europe. I was just in Western Europe for 2 weeks, meeting with members of the European Parliament. We met with NATO. We met with 8 defense manufacturers building drones, supplying the Ukrainian military. I'm leading a delegation to Ukraine in September. We'll be there for 2 weeks. We'll be presenting some advanced defense technology to two defense conferences there in Ukraine. So I'm pretty involved. I've testified to the European Parliament. I've been on U.S. congressional panels. I'm pretty involved in advocating strongly for Ukraine. I know a thing or two about drone warfare, and happy to answer any questions. And if people think up questions that we don't get to today, feel free to reach out on the website, Ukraine Defense Support. The other big website is Defense Tech for Ukraine. Love hearing from people, ordinary Americans, ordinary Canadians, Europeans, about questions and issues and advice, because we're always looking for more advice about how better to support Ukraine.
Okay, so what is it we're sharing on the screen here? Is this what I need to bring up here? No, that's what
we were just talking about that. Yeah, I gotta go book Zelensky's hotel now, right?
Yes.
I gotta go lose some money at the slots at Zelensky. God.
Wow. So what was it you wanted to talk about when we left? You were getting ready to discuss something new.
Well, I thought it might be interesting for your viewers, not your listeners, because they won't be able to see, but I can talk through. But especially people watching, I can show what we did in Europe to advocate for Ukraine and the defense manufacturers we met with, and NATO, the members of the European Parliament, and what are the actual tactical efforts being worked on at the European Parliament to support Ukraine, and at the drone summit that I spoke at in Latvia, their thoughts. But I'm happy to answer any questions or speak to any topic. Any's fine by me.
Well, let me just look in the chat here.
Yeah, please do.
More comments, I think, than questions. Who invented the drones? Seems like they could be really dangerous.
Drones in general?
I guess.
They could definitely be dangerous.
That's the whole point. But it isn't just aerial drones. We're seeing the development really of other robots that are being used on the battlefield in other ways too. Not even just as attack drones, to attack robots, but I think too for pulling wounded soldiers out of areas. I think I've seen that, and then we see, what's the name? Boston Dynamics, those kinds of
the
humanoid and dog style drones. So is that where warfare is going?
They're making these tiny little surveillance drones that are the size of a bug, an insect. And that really concerns me, because the potential for domestic surveillance is just horrendous, right? I mean, England is moving forward with this. England has a little terrorism problem, unfortunately. But they also seem to have a greater willingness as a society to surveil themselves. I mean, they have some of the most. London has, I think, the city that has the most cameras per capita. And they're talking about putting in these drones. And so whenever there would be their version of a 911 call or a gunshot, little boxes on the street corner would open up, and a surveillance drone or two would pop out and look at the cause of the disturbance. And that sounds great if you're in the middle of being mugged, but the long-term surveillance repercussions are really concerning. You wouldn't would cops have to get a warrant to spy on you from a drone, right? Or could they just fly their own drones and just spy on anyone they want? I'm sure that would never get misused. So yeah, it's definitely a concern.
And of course, this comment, not unexpected, but the lovely one says, need to stay out of all foreign wars. They have caused more harm than anything money-making machine.
Well, would we have stayed out of World War II? Should we have stayed out of the Korean War? Should we have left, Kuwait to Saddam's tender mercies? I mean, certainly there's many instances of wars fought under false pretenses or fought just to enrich arms manufacturers or for really, in hindsight, terrible reasons. And we can argue that back and forth. I tend to give a lot of the unfortunate misadventures during the Cold War. I tend to not criticize them as much as I might, because they were fought during the Cold War. That was a very different time. We had a different enemy. We had a very different emphasis on preserving democracy against communism. And I think we have to be very careful to not get involved in wars unnecessarily and without thinking through the consequences. The Iraq War is a perfect example. I went to war in Iraq. I was there for a year, almost died several times. It was a horrendous experience, but I'm glad that I went. I joined the U.S. Army prior to 9/11, so I didn't have any choice in the matter. It was, you're going to Iraq. But I'm glad I went. My company, we did our job. We were 107 men in, 107 men out. Nobody died during my deployment, and we did our jobs professionally. I'm proud of the work that I did. The war was, obviously an incorrect war. I mean, I think most people would realize it. It would agree. It was based on lies, just complete lies. And if in a just world, Bush, W as we call him, he would be, he'd be in jail for a war criminal, right? For making up those lies to send his nation to war under false pretenses. And so, looking at it from a macro level, I'm frankly ashamed that my country would start a war under such false pretenses. Compare that to Ukraine. Like, there's no greater, there couldn't be a bigger difference, a bigger contrast, let's say. I mean, in Ukraine, it's just black versus white. You've got a democracy with flaws, sure, but a democracy invaded by their neighbor, and the people of Ukraine being brutalized and raped and murdered and tortured. And Russia's not a democracy. So I would say, as far as wars go, this is a pretty clear-cut case of them needing our support, both from a practical level of supporting our own national defense, but also from a moral level. If we want to preserve democracy and preserve the lives of people, I think it's a pretty strong case there. So I guess I would disagree with that statement. I think that there are some wars that are justified. It's just like the biblical proclamation, "Thou shalt not kill." And those of us who are Christian take that pretty seriously. But if you look at the actual Aramaic, it's actually "thou shalt not murder." And unfortunately, sometimes you have to kill. No man listening to this I would imagine would allow someone to come into his house and rape and murder his wife or his daughters. No, you would kill the man. Naturally, any man in the world would do that. So you have to take things from a practical perspective. Is it really in our national interest to allow Russia to take over Ukraine? Is that good for the world? Of course not.
Yeah. So let me see here. CBC Brown. Drones are just another tool. They can be used only on how we decide. It's malicious human minds, not the tool, with the exception of nukes. Nukes are never beneficial. That's just a comment, I guess. What else do we have here in the chat? Load your questions up, folks. If you can make it a question rather than just comments, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'm just reading the comments as well. So Jubilee says, Sandy from Canada. Hello, Sandy. She says, do you think Zelensky is good for his country? I mean, yeah, I think he's the Churchill that they needed at that point. You know, that famous line, right? I need ammunition, not a ride. You know, sometimes you need the right man for the job. Right, I should say right person for the job. Long term, I feel like for his country to become more Western and become a greater part of the EU, you know, they want to join the EU, perhaps a different politician would be better. But for a wartime president, I think he's done a pretty good job. Not perfect.
So I was in the as the full scale invasion took hold, we kept hearing that Putin doesn't want to take all of Ukraine. They just want to all these kinds of claims. And yet today, and I'm trying to find the video here, saying that actually Putin, it was on Times Now, and it was a news conference that they're replaying on a loop live, saying that Putin is going to take all of Ukraine. So I think that kind of plays into the whole narrative that what happened in Ukraine was a U.S.-led coup that installed Zelensky as the leader of the country, and then I hear that this bizarre story that Ukraine invaded Russia, and that's why the war is ongoing.
What?
I know. I've had can you just please clarify that for people, because it literally, that is what is stuck in some people's heads, that somehow Ukraine started this war. And we're even hearing that kind of rhetoric from Donald Trump at times, where he's blaming the war on Zelensky and blaming the war on Ukraine. And I think it's just an extension of this narrative that NATO expansion is the real reason for the war because it provoked Russia. So that's been conflated into this idea that Ukraine somehow invaded Russia. It's bizarre.
I would love to see an article or even some tweet or something saying that Ukraine has invaded Russia. That's a new one. I have not heard that. Now, non-conspiracy theorists, like very respected political scientists, professors, I don't think any generals or any actual military leaders, but respected people have made that argument that NATO expansion has provoked Russia. And I think there is some truth to that, in all honesty. If, we would not take kindly to Mexico forming a defensive alliance with China and stationing Chinese military hardware in Russia and in Mexico. I mean, however, it is a different situation. We have not, we did invade, the United States did invade Mexico, but that was over 100 years ago, and nobody thinks we're going to do that now. I don't think the Mexican people are very afraid of that. Whereas the Finnish people and the Estonian, Latvian, Lithuanian people are very much afraid of Russia invading them. And so they're all very, very happy to be in NATO. And you saw, I mean, Finland joined NATO. They made the largest territorial expansion of NATO along the Russian border in history. So is it do I think that Russia has grounds to be upset at Ukraine taking concrete steps to join NATO? Yes. And I think that, the rest of the world should acknowledge those concerns and those security needs of Russia. Mm-hmm. Does that give them a reason, a justification to invade Ukraine? Of course not. We would never say, Mexico, we don't agree with your trade policies, which is very common, right? Or we think you're not doing a good enough job to stop the flow of migration, and so we're going to invade you. We would cut off ties with them. We would invoke a trade war. We would have tons of sanctions and tariffs and things. We wouldn't invade them. I mean, it's just nonsense. This argument that somehow Ukraine provoked. I mean, this is I'll put it in terms your listeners and viewers can understand. NATO clearly was wearing too short of a skirt when she walked down that alley. And what could Russia do? I mean, she was just, you know, looking all delicious and you know, wearing that short skirt and just walking in the wrong part of town. Of course, Russia had to grab her and rip her shirt off and do you know what with her. Of course he had to. It was just natural. Any other country would have done the same, right? If Mexico had been walking in a short skirt past the United States, we would have done the same thing, right? No, we wouldn't have, because we're a good country and we don't invade our neighbors. It's crazy.
I hope not, although I have to say there's an awful lot of talk about Canada becoming the 51st state these days, which makes
I want
me
to apologize.
nervous.
All of your apparently Canadians take this serious. Americans think it's a joke, but you guys think it's serious? Really? I'm serious. I'm curious.
I think there's some seriousness to it, Carl. Yeah.
You mean seriousness amongst Americans or amongst Canadians?
Some. I'll be talking about it more tomorrow night if you want to tune in. Yeah.
I might. I'm very interested because I'll tell you, I'm very proud U.S. Army veteran, and none of the guys that I know would have taken up arms against Canada. We would have.
I know. I think that it could, if this progresses much further, I could see it causing problems within the United States, dividing things down there because of what some people on your side of the border wanted to up here. Yeah, it's a real thing. It's absolutely a real thing. In fact, I can tell on what was it, Tuesday, fireworks day here, Canada Day, right? Our version of 4th of July. Yeah. So it was the saddest Canada Day of my lifetime.
Really? Why?
Oh, yes, because everywhere I went, all the people I spoke to, even the person, it's at a church, so even the person on the PA system, the master of ceremonies, opening the Canada Day fireworks celebration, talking about how Canada is at we're all worried about the fate of our nation because of the talk of the 51st state. That's a very real thing.
About the future of the Canadian nation. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of separatism and there's some concerning demographic changes, and there's Canadian society is very divided, just like we are down here.
Yeah.
But you guys really think the U.S. might invade? Really?
I don't know that it's so much about invading as it is. It's certain political groups and even Mr. Trump himself that are exploiting those separatist movements in Canada in order to potentially divide the country up and take, like, say, Alberta or maybe all of Western Canada. And yeah, there's a movement afoot, and there are absolutely American tentacles from various political groups and business interests, I would say, extending right into Canada. So yeah, I'd be happy to have a larger conversation with you about that another time. But it is a real concern for Canadians. It was top of mind for people on this 158th birthday of our nation, as people are concerned, especially here in Ontario, where I'm from, that the country might break up and that portions of the country, if not maybe even all of it, would be absorbed by the United States or possibly even annexed. And I mean, that extends even to Greenland, right? So that's crazy rhetoric too, that a lot of people still aren't taking seriously. But, oh no, I think it's, for some people, it's a very real thing, as insane as it all sounds and as completely unnecessary as it all is, because we are the greatest of friends. We are an ally. So I don't get it, because it's like we're your friends. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, I think it's the fever dream of one particular orange-faced politician, and then there's I've talked to many Canadians. I got relatives in Vancouver. I talked to many Canadians who they do have some legitimate concerns and some really strong concerns, and maybe even some let's say separatist tendencies. I mean, we all know Quebec is chock full of separatist tendencies, right? Mm-hmm. So that might be a concern, but I mean,
I don't think that even if Ontario or certainly not Quebec, or let's say BC broke off, would they want to join the U.S.? I don't think so. I think Canadians
look at what's going on in
they like us from
right now.
Yeah.
Here, I'll show you.
Yeah, I'm curious.
I'm going to show you what's going on out there. Here we go. Maybe I can just get you an image instead of the actual video, but like there's a campaign. Big money being spent here. I'll bring this up on the screen for you. Sure. And it's at a fever pitch out in Alberta in particular, and they are ramping up this rhetoric as well on here. I'll play this for you.
But along it, it's the main artery through the heart of the province, the QE2 connecting north and south. But along its shoulder stands a billboard dividing Albertans.
I imagine there are signs like that saying the same thing in a lot of the different towns that you go drive by.
Somebody paid the money and they have perfect right to do so, but it's you might as well flush it down the toilet.
The sign across the highway from Bowden has the town's office fielding calls.
It's just a disaster that the town of Bowden is getting the flack for this.
The mayor says they are mostly angry about the unpatriotic message the town has nothing to do with.
We're going to burn the town down. The community is not happy about it in any way, shape, or form, and it does not reflect our preferences.
The billboard was paid for by the Alberta-based group America Fund, founded by members of the 2019 Wexit movement. They say they've received support from Western Canadians ever since U.S. President Donald Trump suggested Canada join the United States, and as tensions between the two countries rise.
The federal government is talking about export tariffs on Alberta oil and gas, or export bans on Alberta oil and gas. They're the ones who say that nothing's off the table. Well, we're the ones who are saying then if that's not off the table, then the 51st state is not off the table.
The group says this billboard is only the beginning. More are planned as they raise money to have their voices heard.
We're contracting with folks in America to tell our story, that this whole Canadian political narrative that Canadians don't want to be the 51st state is that's just simply not true.
Experts say it's a flashy way in a high traffic area to get the message out, but it's unlikely to have any lasting impact.
So I think there'll be a fair bit of attention paid to it. It may generate some more support from some Canadians, but certainly we're seeing much more on the other side of Canadians who treasure their country.
Especially as Canadian pride continues to swell.
No, we, like I say, we're Canadians.
Let's become the 51st state. It's just humorous, but no.
Megan Cobb, Global News.
That's an older report, and I can tell you that as much as people there are still dismissing this, a lot of people as a joke, if you go talk to people in Alberta right now, it is not. And there's a massive groundswell of support for separating from Canada and joining Canada, the U.S. as the 51st state. There's a lot of propaganda, a lot of money being injected into this, like big money. Yeah, it's a very real thing, Carl.
I had no idea. Okay, well, thank you for educating me. I'm looking at the amerifund.ca website right now. Yeah. Crazy. Okay, well, that might be something that you might want to be concerned about. Yeah, it sounds like there is definitely some concerns there. I think
the premier passing new legislation, making it easier for creating a pathway really to having a referendum on this. The conservative premier of Alberta, the leader of the People's Party of Canada, just as we approached Canada Day, in a statement coming out, which I received by email, saying that Albertans need to have a referendum and they need to vote yes to separate from Canada. This is the leader of a political party in Canada. I know it doesn't make sense, right? Seems to make sense to some people. It blows my mind. Very real thing. And of course, you have now Quebec and Alberta, two provinces really ramping up separatist sentiment for different reasons. And now other provinces kind of getting on that bandwagon as well, especially with Alberta, Saskatchewan. There's a movement in BC that is building as well. So, and this is all because of the guy in the White House right now and his rhetoric. So yeah, it's real.
Interesting. I mean, but okay, I've heard that. Like I said, I've heard separatist ideas from my Kanakistan. I shouldn't call that you guys that.
I use that all the time. Go ahead.
I think my Canadian buddies, they tell me I can't make jokes anymore. Like I used to call you guys America's hat. I'm not supposed to do that anymore. But anyway, Canada. I still treasure that scene in American Bacon where John Candy gets punched for criticizing Canadian beer. It's one of my favorite. But anyway, okay, separatist tendencies, but I'm not hearing a lot about joining the U.S.
Oh yeah, it's huge. It's huge in Alberta right now. Yeah,
isn't it just a negotiating tactic for better policies from the federal government?
You might argue that, but I don't think so. No, it's a very real thing. Promises of lower taxes. It's a larger part of what I would say is an attempt to realign the world geopolitically into spheres of dominance. A lot of this is coming from Russia and the philosophy of Alexander Dugin. And I mean, I don't know, are you aware that Dugin actually came to North America and met with some of these social media influencers on the conservative side? Oh yeah, he sat down and did interviews with all of those people. A lot of those people, I think every single one of them. I can't say that, but a bunch of the people even involved in the Tenet media scandal. He sat down. There's a video online. You'll find Lauren Southern with Alexander Dugin.
Yeah, he's a fascinating guy. He basically took I'm not sure I'd say Nazism, like traditional fascism, the idea of fascism, and state control of everything. Basically, it's like communism without the help the common man, thing. Whatever. It's the same thing, right? It's all authoritarianism at the end of the day. But he took that and he actually makes a case for it. He says that this is man's natural condition and we should support authoritarianism, right? We should carve up the world into little, it's basically 1984. He's arguing for the 1984 world, right? Total state control and these countries of dominance that have fake wars now and then to keep the populations in line.
Well, he advocates what his thing, his political philosophy is this new converged communism and fascism, which he calls fourth political theory. And that's really what it is. It's combining the two extremes, the fascism with the communism into a new form of socialism, which is being used to launch a war on liberalism, which he sees as being self-destructive and immoral, because it's all this centers around the culture wars, which is what he is using and the Russians are using as part of their propaganda to really drive a wedge in and divide our society. So that's what is playing out here right now. It all plays into everything that we're talking about here tonight. It plays into what's going on in Ukraine. It plays into what's going on in Israel. It's about the 51st state. It's about why Trump hates Trudeau so much, why he still continues to hammer on Canada, because we have a liberal government that he sees as an affront to conservatism, or I would say this neo-populism that they have manifesting itself in the form of the new Trump administration 2.0, which is far more extreme than what we had during Trump 1.0. But I digress. I could go on about this stuff for hours and hours and hours, but this is really why, because there is this global war going on that I'd say 99% of the people here in North America and in the USA and Canada certainly are completely unaware of. We are at war. There's a giant culture war, a war that's been launched on Western society largely by Russia and its allies, to undermine liberalism, liberal democracies, and install a new global world order that is predicated on this fourth political theory that comes from the mind of Alexander Dugin, who is Vladimir Putin's brain. And that's why his work is required reading now at all the Russian military academies. It's a real thing. And people don't understand what's going on because most people here don't even know who Dugin is. That's also largely because we have allowed some degree of censorship here, which is preventing some people from actually getting a hold of Dugin's work. And so the people here in North America, Canada, they're afraid to even let people read this guy's stuff because his thoughts, frankly, are very dangerous. His philosophy is very dangerous because it does lead to violence. It inevitably leads to war because it advocates for the expansion of Russia and even, frankly, the United States over time, which is why you're getting this rhetoric from Trump. Sorry to tell you, but that's, I think, largely what is going on. And I wish people were more aware, because the only way to combat something like this is through awareness so that people know what the enemy really is. And the enemy really is this new converged communo-fascistic ideology that is permeating itself in a very threatening way to our very society and our values here as Canadians and Americans. It's an affront to democracy itself and to freedom.
Well, I can see I'm going to have to spend some more time reading Dugin's work. I don't have any books by him. I've just spent some time on Wikipedia. But yeah, I've heard him referred to as Putin's brain several times. And certainly I absolutely agree that Russia's been at war with Western democracies for decades, unfortunately. They've got thousands of people slaving away in office buildings in St. Petersburg, putting comments on YouTube videos like this one, right? A lot of those, those bots are actually people who are paid by the comment, or, finding political parties on the far left and the far right that they can support. It's crazy. But I know a lot more about drones than I do about this sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm sorry to drag you down this road, and it is getting into the political sphere, which I know that you really, that you're not really here to do that. So I'm kind of walking on the edge here a little bit, and I don't mean to do that with you tonight.
Oh, it's very interesting. I'm educated on Canadian. I know very little about you guys, so I like to learn more.
Yeah, I wish I knew more about us too, because it's pretty damn confusing at times. We're a pretty crazy country up here.
It's just so funny that we Americans down here, you guys all know everything about us. You watch our news, you get our TV programs, you get everything, you learn everything that's going on down here. But it's like you guys don't even exist. To give you an idea, I was in Vancouver, BC a few years ago, and there was a shooting in downtown Vancouver. There was these Chinese gangs shooting it out, and with AK-47s. And I turned on the news, and of course the Canadian news talked about the shooting, but it also talked about what was Obama doing. This was during the Obama administration. Blah blah. What's going on in Washington D.C. Blah blah blah. And then I went back to the States the next day, and nothing about the shooting, nothing at all. Like, we barely even hear when you guys have a new prime minister. We're so ignorant about what happens up there. It's crazy. It almost makes me think it's a purposeful effort. Either that, or I guess the American attention span is just really not great.
Yeah. I know. I've traveled in the States, and if I go down to Texas or Florida, there's very little talk about Canada. We're inconsequential, but we are.
Seattle, you guys are 3 hours north. I have relatives up there. Nobody talks about Canada ever. We talk about Oregon, sure. Idaho, sure. California, oh, don't get me started. We talk about them, but Canada might as well not even exist. It's crazy because you guys are right up there.
Yeah, I know. We talk about you guys all the time, every night. It's, in fact, constantly. But that's because we love you guys. I mean, actually, I love the United States. I used to love going over there. I'm honestly a little bit fearful about crossing the border right now with the way everything is down there. I'm afraid that they're going to deport me to El Salvador or something.
I know. I've got a lot of friends who are, they want to take pictures and memes off their phones before they cross any borders. It's really concerning. Well, anyway, this is an interesting discussion, but I know we're getting close, and I do actually have a hard stop. I actually wouldn't mind to drop a few minutes early because I gotta every Thursday night. My group here in Seattle, we have our Ukraine Defense Support meeting, and actually, any of your viewers or watchers are welcome to join. And then so I wanted to give a quick plug, if you don't mind. I don't think I can go through the whole time that we spent in Europe, but I could show a few highlights just that might be of interest to your team. So I'm looking at the America Fund website.
Okay.
What the heck? Crazy. Making America great and make Canada great again. I don't know. Crazy. Well, anyway, so over here, so here's what we did in Europe. This might be of interest. So this group, Defense Tech for Ukraine, I should probably start with the website. So what this group does, this might be interesting to your viewers and listeners. So I and a few others created this group that what we do is we accelerate defense innovation. And what does that mean? We're a tech incubator that provides engineering support and funding and investment support and marketing and accounting and other support for defense manufacturers who support Ukraine. So we meet with a lot of American, European, and a few Canadian defense manufacturers who in some way or another are supporting Ukraine. And that's part of why we were in Europe for 2 weeks. And that's a large part of why we're going to be in Ukraine here in September. And so we have regular weekly calls. We have, a lot of signal chats. We've got a lot of files and connections with investors and donors and members of Congress. And what I would love is actually, I wanted to be sure and give the shout out to your listeners, because Canada, let me back up. Unfortunately, as we discussed, American support for Ukraine is at a trickle now, and probably it looks like that trickle is going to get shut off soon, sadly. So really, we're pivoting to Europe and to Canada with a little bit of Israel thrown in, Israel and Australia, I should say. And so Canada actually has been very, very supportive of Ukraine, and Carney has actually really done some great work in that regard recently. And Canada has this program called IDEAS, Innovation for Defense Excellence and Security. And IDEAS is a funding mechanism. It's a program through the Canadian Ministry of Defense. Is that what you guys call it up there, the MOD? Or do you have a different name for it?
Yeah, Ministry of Defense, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Most of the countries in the world call it the MOD. But in America, because we have to be different, remember we call it the DOD, Department of Defense. But so IDEAS has these great programs, these defense technology programs where people can submit their ideas on basically drones and anti-drone systems. And so if any of your listeners or viewers are working with any drone or anti-drone companies or innovators, we would love to work with them and help them submit their ideas to the IDEAS program. And we do have one defense program that we work with that actually did succeed and actually received a $50,000 grant from the Canadian government. So it's all about detecting drones and shooting down drones and building better drones and blah blah blah. I wish I had it loaded earlier. There's a couple pages on here that have some good pictures that really illustrate what they're doing, but this is not one of them. Sorry, I don't have that loaded, but I can share that with anybody who reaches out. You just go to, if you Google Canadian, Canadian Innovation for Defense Excellence and Security. That's IDEAS. You'll see their 2025 and 2026 sandbox is what they call them. It's a hackathon. It's what it is. So they have regular programs. Okay, so any questions on the Canadian IDEAS program before we get back to Defense Tech for Ukraine?
No, not really. Not from me. I'm just checking the chat here again. And just technically, we have a Ministry of Defense, but then the actual department is called the Department of National Defense, or the DND here in Canada for what that's.
DND. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
that's
not that it matters that much, but
that's good to know these things.
yeah, they're still talking about all the the Russian stuff in the chat. Again, folks, utilize Carl while he's here. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat.
Yep, you got me for about 10 minutes.
So yeah, continue with this, I guess, Carl. What will Canadian money? It's okay. He's grifting all the time. that's what I think with Stargazer says that.
Well, you can make a point that we're all grifters in one way or another. You know, I mean, really, it's philosophical. If you're saying that, if people are saying that Zelensky is a grifter, then I'd ask them for evidence. But just saying somebody's a grifter, well, everybody's a salesperson. When you're born, you're a salesperson. You're selling your personal value to the people around you. Does that mean you're grifting? I mean, that's kind of I don't know, without any evidence, that doesn't mean anything.
Well, you've got some fans in their Jubilee is saying, good point, Carl. Carl speaks the truth. So you're having an impact on some people. For sure.
I'm just I do what I do regardless of what people say. I've been doing this for 3 years. I've almost lost my life in Ukraine several times. I have lost several good friends. I'm pretty sure I'm standing on the right side of history. So if people don't agree with that, then that's on them. But getting back to defense tech for Ukraine. So we've got about 300 engineers, innovators, project managers, venture fund capitalists, members of the U.S. No, they're not part of our immediate. They're part of our greater network. But that 300 is the core people who occasionally show up on our calls. We've got about 100 people who come every week, and then the rest join when they can. And we've got a much larger network of people who are allies and helpers in one way or another. So what we're trying to do is basically speed up the innovation of defense tech, of various weapon systems that are being made for Ukraine. And so the way we do that is primarily by providing advice and free engineering support. And then we do provide small grants. We've provided about 40,000 so far. So these are very small, like micro grants, but have been very helpful. And we've managed to get several products onto the market and actually onto the battlefield. So with that, let me shift gears here. So this was our delegation to Ukraine last year. Let me share my screen here. Now there's a few slides here. No, actually, I think I can't share these. This is the redacted. Okay, we have a different one that's not redacted, but this one is. So, that was me and another member of the team in Kyiv at a drone factory there. So these were the drone factories that we visited. Well, not all drone factories. A few of them made other things, but mainly drone factories. And then that's a little info about Defense Tech for Ukraine. So we basically help innovators. So this group here that you see the pictures, this is the Galician Guild of drones. They're based out of Lviv, and they're taking regular 10-inch FPVs like you see behind me, and they're making them better. So you can see there in blue, that's a 3D printed drop kit to allow dropping mortar munitions, things like that. Then they've got ways to easily swap out the antennas for different frequencies, and they've got upgraded motors and upgraded power transmission systems. So it's all very deep in the weeds, technical engineering support, but it's fantastic when you hear back from the soldiers that the equipment that you provided them has allowed them to conduct operations at an accelerated tempo and help keep them alive, frankly. So we find that very rewarding. So we did a lot. We do a lot with drone detectors. But what I'm looking for is the slide on the fiber drone. Where is that? Okay, so this was it. So this was the first combat deployed Ukrainian fiber drone that we're very proud to have helped support and helped get onto the battlefield, get out of an inventor's idea and get actually physically created, prototype tested and then actually combat deployed. We're very proud of that. And then after that, we took the design and we just gave it away for free to half a dozen Ukrainian manufacturers, and they just took it and ran with it. And now they're making like 4th generation versions of these. They look much different now. They're not a big spool like that. They're they're much more aerodynamic system. The warhead actually fits inside the spool, or some of them put the battery in the spool and the warhead on top, and they look very different. And they've got just, some of them can even go 30 kilometers. You know, they've got much greater range. They're able to fly at higher altitudes. It's very impressive what they've done with our little baby that we started 2 years ago.
Can I ask a question? Do these things launch from aircraft, or do they launch from the ground?
Just like you see there, just from the ground.
Okay, and then the fiber optic cables just
spools out.
Spools out over the trees or any obstacles or any, just like that. And then the only way to stop these things then is to either shoot them down or cut the fiber optic lines.
Yep. So the best way, so this is something I could talk about for hours, is anti-drone tactics, TTPs, as we'd say in the U.S. Army. And the best way to interdict a fiber optic drone is to interdict the fiber optic controller, the operator, preferably with a 155 millimeter artillery shell. But if you can't do that, there's many other ways to do it. The worst way to do it is for the unfortunate target to try to do it with his AK-74 or even a shotgun. Shooting down a drone with a shotgun is not easy. Especially when it's coming in 100 kilometers an hour, coming in hot directly at you. It's kind of a losing proposition there unless you're in really thick brush. But there's many ways to do it. There's a whole tactic to it. The best way beyond the 155 millimeter method is to shoot down the surveillance drones that are guiding the FPV drone pilot to his target destination. That's usually the best way to do it, because those drones will not be fiber optic. They will be just regular RF. So you can jam them down, or you can, use various different ways to shoot them down. So I'll show you one of the Ukrainian manufacturers we're very proud to support is Varta Drones, and they've got a great website. Their homepage really explains the whole thing. Oh, here it is, Varta. Okay, so yeah, so these guys presented with us at the big drone summit in Latvia when we were in Europe, and they've got a really simple system. It's just it's recoilless, twin-barreled, 12-gauge anti-drone shotgun. So you can see he's flying up and bang, knocks it down. I hope that's coming through all right through the video, but it's a very simple system. It costs $300. You can attach it to any drone and shoot down enemy drones. It's a great system. So this is the sort of these are the sort of manufacturers that we're supporting and helping to spread their technology to the Ukrainian soldiers.
Okay. So
unfortunately,
go ahead. Yeah.
Well, just unfortunately, I've got to wrap up. I do have a hard stop. Does anyone have any other questions or anything that I could answer?
Well, I think actually at this point, if you can provide information on how they can get in touch with you again, then that might be helpful. And then if people want to follow up with you or support you in some way, then they can do that. And I can put that up on the screen here. Do you have an email or a website address? What would you suggest?
Yeah, so I mean, I changed my name on the screen here to put Defense Tech for Ukraine. That's probably the best website. Ukraine Defense Support, I'm of course very active with the group, but it's mainly aimed at Seattle. So whereas Defense Tech for Ukraine, we're international. Like I said, we got 300 active members, and all over the world. We've got we've got English language calls, we've got Ukrainian language calls. We're trying to set up one in German, probably should do French as well.
Is that defensetechforukraine.com?
.org.
.org, sorry.
Yeah. I should put that in the chat of this video?
There you go. I've got it up on the screen. defensetechforukraine.org on the bottom on the ticker. And if you go there, there's a contact page, I assume, where people can reach out to you. Okay.
Yeah, that'll go to our administrative team, and I'll see it. And if there's anything that says, "Hey, Carl," then I'll answer it personally. But yeah, what we're just trying to do is encourage ordinary Canadians, Americans, Europeans, people who care about democracy and about saving lives to get involved. We really strongly believe this is the cause of our time. And so we're all volunteers. None of us are paid. This, if we're grifters, then we're grifters for democracy. Like, we're getting paid in nebulous democracy at some point. We're hoping, but we're pretty happy with this work, and we'd love to have more people on the team. So if anybody wants to help, we would certainly welcome them.
All right, Carl Larson, thank you so much for joining us on the program tonight. We're going to wrap up here. I ran this last night, but this is actually the fireworks display that I went to that I was speaking about before. And I run on this tonight, not just for Canadians again, who are celebrating being Canuckistanians, but also for America, because tomorrow is the 4th of July, and happy birthday, America. We still love you, even though somebody wants to take us over. But I don't hold that against you or even America at all, Carl. So it's okay. And with that, I leave everybody here with this tonight. Again, a great fireworks display, celebrating both Canadian and American values and freedom. I'll see you guys back here tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Carl, thank you. See y'all on the flip side.
That just itched to roam. He's chasing his dreams, he's far from home. With a heart full of love and a spirit so free, he's living his life wild and carefree. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmos free, running wild, wild as the wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. A tail that wags like it's never heard of a blur. Cosmo's on a journey, he's got no chains. He's running through fields, breaking all the lanes. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmo's free, running wild, wild as the wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. So if you're feeling lost, just think of Cosmo's run. Remember his spirit, his freedom, his fun. And maybe one day when you're feeling low, you'll find your own freedom and let your spirit go. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmos free, running wild, wild as the wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. A tail that wags like it's never heard of a blur. Cosmo's on a journey, he's got no chains. He's running through fields, breaking all the lanes. He's got the stars in his eyes, the wind in his fur. A tail that wags like it's never heard of a blur. Cosmo's on a journey, he's got no chains. He's running through fields, breaking all the lanes. Now the night's getting old and the sky's turning gray, but Cosmo's still out there, he's miles away. He's not looking back, he's got his path to tread.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.